So based on the title, you're probably thinking that I'm gonna just bluntly declare the three of these to be the best grinders that you can get in 2020. That is not correct. I'm going to explain in this video why I picked these of all of the other ones for my personal taste preferences and what I'm looking for in the cup. So let's get started. So these are the three grinders we have remaining: the Versalab, the Ode, and the Monolith Flat Max. And I want to take the time to talk a bit about why these are the three that were able to stand the test that we put them through and what that means for you, the viewer. So a couple things right off the bat. First of all, the Burs that I'm keeping with this are not the standard Burs, nor are they the upcoming Shuriken Burs that are now starting to ship with other Maxes and Flats around the world. Keeping the pre-revision Mahlkonig filter Burs. And what's frustrating about this is an out of production part, and all Mahlkonig really needs to do is just get the mold back out and get to work and make more of them. But for now, they've chosen not to do that. So for the filter coffee test, I'm actually selecting two winners. This, just as the chassis for these beautiful, beautiful clear sweet Burs, and the Ode for filter coffee. And again, I will talk a bit more about why. So for espresso, there was a clear winner to me, and that was the Versalab. Every other grinder that I tested either strayed too far into the realm of prioritizing body over clarity, or emphasizing so much clarity that you would lose anything that would make it pleasurable and tactile in the way that one thinks of as an espresso. So as to why I didn't pick any of the other big flat grinders over the Versalab, here's why. Let's do a quick rundown. The EK43S always tasted more powdery. You didn't get enough of an increase in body to justify the intense clarity that also simultaneously was powdery, and I noticed that both with the EK43S that I aligned and tested and with the original EK43 that was in the sample picture but I have not yet addressed in this video series. I had that one as well here. They are the same Burs, and I tried 2 for 2 and got the same taste results and was fine just rolling with the EK43S for the test, but I'm pretty confident that is very specifically the newer Mahlkonig geometry speaking more than anything. Now, in terms of the other two 98mm flat geometries that I did not keep, both of which were made by SSP. The high uniformity, it reminded me of my favorite record in a bad way. My favorite record is Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, and mastermind Kevin Shields spent an ungodly sum of money and time trying to make this perfect, almost blob of noise that could be heard just as well through a high-end speaker system as it could through a boombox. What that really means is that everything is just blaring at you at once, and only after multiple listens do you really start to peel back the layers bit by bit and understand just how much intricacy is in the mix and how it's not just a monolithic wall of sound that is just a big brown note, but actually there's some incredible beauty in that record. That to me was what the high uniformity Burs tasted like. An overwhelming one note that over time as you would sip it would start to reveal itself, but it's just not for me. It's just too focused in a way that I did not find enjoyable on a day-to-day basis. Now, in terms of the other SSP set, the low uniformity, it reminded me almost of a window that you see in a house, and you pull up the blinds and you think it's clean, and all of a sudden the light shines through and all of the dust and cobwebs are suddenly exposed. Well, the low uniformity Burs were almost like an attempt to get all of the clarity of an EK Bur, but just dirty it up enough to get a little bit of a mixture of body and a bit more, quote, complexity that people would refer to as more of like a conical Bur, blending complexity. And I just didn't really think it missed the mark. I'm actually happy to see that Kafatek is abandoning that Bur set and going with their own, because I really didn't like it for all of the coffees that we tried, especially the Kieni in most tests. However, there was an outlier for that Bur set in this test. I preferred it probably neck for first during the regular Kieni espresso test, and I almost never would pick that Bur in another situation, and I tried it multiple times even after the initial testing was done just to make sure that I wasn't crazy and was going A and B back and forth with other coffees, and I kept coming up with the same conclusion, so that Bur set is gonna go away. So what about the filter tests? How were the two that I picked, the Burs from the original EK43 and the brand new to the market entry-level home grinder that you can get probably at Crate and Barrel, Williams Sonoma, shops of that sort, very far from Prima Coffee, Seattle Coffee Gear, or any specialty retailers like it? What is that signaling? Well, really just signals that those were the only dedicated filter grinders in the entire test. The question was, Could an espresso grinder actually perform well in a filter coffee brewing test? And the answer was a resounding no. The niche was so strong whenever we did the tests that I couldn't get it to an enjoyable strength and balance of clarity. And when I hear talk about it being a fantastic filter coffee grinder, my immediate reaction is just, do you drink coffee in a cafe? Because it doesn't taste like that. So that's why the niche did not do well. The Versalab was okay. It had a bit of a conical blending of flavor, and I couldn't really get it strong enough. The perceived strength wasn't there. It just did not really taste like filter coffee as I knew it. Then the low uniformity Burs from the Max, the 98 millimeter SSPs, they were like, again, just like the espresso test, like a dirty window. It was like a picture of a filter coffee I really wanted to love, but it was just unpleasant enough that I didn't want to drink it. Now, interestingly enough, one might suspect, why haven't you picked the high uniformity Burs as the drip coffee winner based on things that you've said in the past, based on things you might read and hear about online? Don't you want everything to be relatively close together? And my response to that is this. I did several different tests on that grinder specifically, just to make sure that I gave it a fair shot at every time. And by the way, I was always tasting and recording notes for myself before I was doing the TDS tests and the extraction yield calculations, because again, flavor is the thing that trumps everything. Flavor and the characteristics of the cup. I always want that to be the focus of the test. And strangely enough, and this exact test held up the same way in espresso as well with this set, is that an extraction at 19 or 20% from the high uniformity Burs did not taste measurably different from something even 5% extraction higher. That's right, the 20 and the 25% brews, they really weren't that different. And it really messed with my head. It was the only grinder that performed that way. And I did it again and again and again across both filter and espresso just to make sure I wasn't crazy. But it's almost as if with such an incredible focus on that one narrow band of on a particle distribution chart that it somehow becomes boring. And that's how it was to me. Again, some people might really like it. I just did not enjoy it. Then what about the EK43S? Why not that? It's the classic, coffee grinder that you see in shops worldwide, both in the newer EK43 form and in the little guy, the EK43S. Why wasn't that picked as the number one or the number two even? Well, I would rather have less strength and less sweetness and higher clarity than I would the powderiness that the EK43s that I tested with the new Burs performed with. And you'd think, okay, well, doesn't that mean you'd pick like a 48 millimeter conical that you can get really clear coffee with? If it's a brew Bur, you gonna pick that over the EK43? No. You were able to, it was so neck and neck in terms of actual strength from that and the Ode. I mean, the Ode in the test with the Chieni was about 21, 22% yield, and the EK43S was only 1% higher at about 23. Whenever the perceived strength and the actual strength of the brews are that neck and neck, and the question just comes down to, do you want one to be sweeter and dirtier and one to be less sweet and cleaner? Well, I'm gonna pick the less sweet, cleaner, clearer flavor one every time. So that's why, at least in these tests, the Ode did perform better. So what does that say about filter coffee brewing in general? Outside of if you're an espresso head, I know that a lot of you don't even like filter coffee because it just seems like this foreign world, too much waiting, all these different variables that you are sick of already dealing with variables in espresso. What does this really say about filter coffee? Well, I love filter coffee. And even though there are principles that you can apply to both espresso and filter coffee in terms of what are you trying to find in an ideal beverage, I think that most people still do want a blending of flavors to a degree and a texture that espresso really is the hallmark of that specific flavor profile that you don't really want in filter coffee. And that opinion has been challenged over the years, especially from actually this Burs set. I mean, the 1 to 3 lungos that I was pulling, these were fantastic with it. As you'd expect, the things that you've heard over the years, you can get what essentially is concentrated filter coffee. Everything you love about filter coffee can be made true in an espresso, the same level of clarity, sweetness, flavor clarity, and no real body from this Burs set if you're able to get your hands on one, or to a degree, the regular EK43s that you can get now can produce it. It's just a little bit powderier and dirtier, but Outside of that, for both the 1-to-1 and 1-to-2 ratio espressos, those are so much different than what people want in filter coffee that you really should be considering two different grinders. And I don't think that there is one size fits all winner unless you're willing to make some level of compromise in terms of one of the beverages. If you wanted this to be your one size fits all grinder for both filter and espresso, you really wouldn't be walking away with espresso shots that are any shorter than maybe 1 to 2.5 or 1 to 3 for optimum flavor, but you'd be able to get great, filter coffee in return. And to the same extent, the niche can produce incredible ristrettos from anything 1-to-1 or 1 to 1.5, but I just really, really don't like it for filter coffee. And I think that needs to be said more clearly. I know that it's at an attractive price point. People want to believe that it's a, quote, dual-use grinder, and you can make the beverage with it. But again, when it comes down to being put against other things that are better than it or more in a different focus in terms of filter coffee, things like the Ode, it really just doesn't hold up. And I would ask that if you have one, to continually challenge your opinions. And for anybody that has a grinder, constantly reevaluate what your needs, wants, and perception of the beverage is. Have your friends over, have them taste your coffee, give it to coworkers, family. Make sure that you have a wide variety of opinions from which you can pull new information in and act to make different choices on. Because the last thing we want to see is someone forever evangelize even this Burs set. I hope I don't like this Burs set one day. I hope that I thought, wow, I can't believe I got in front of a camera and was gushing about an out of production part. Well, I want this to be challenged. I want to see things continually be pushed forward. And honestly, a good sign that that's still happening is just the incredible capacity of all of the grinders that were tested so far. So let me know what you think. Please comment below or reach out to me separately. Tell me, what grinders should I test now? Obviously, these were all tried to be accomplished at one time, and they've all now been sent off to new homes, except for just a couple that are remaining. And again, that's the Max with the Burs, the Ode, and the Versalab. Let me know what else I should test besides it. There are still some things in the pipeline coming up in 2021 that will be benchmarked against these. But in the meantime, let me know what you want to see more of. And again, thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate your time and effort. Keep drinking great coffee.